I'm so excited to welcome to Radiant Pearls Ministries today a sweet friend of mine, Kristi Lyons. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in.
Perfect.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I lived in Santee for 7 years. I'm a San Diego native. My husband and I have been married for 15 years this year. I was not a child bride. I was just very young. I always like to tell people that. We adopted our son 7 years ago. We just live our quiet life. Not so quiet.
So I have to ask, what is your favorite dessert?
I am not a sweet person, and so my answer would be a bag of popcorn. And that is because I'm not known to be a sugary, sweet person. I can be a little salty sometimes, and I think that when the heat is on, I can get very loud. So a bag of popcorn. I'm more of a savory person than a sugary person. So I missed you that much.
So Kristi, would you let all the viewers know, tell us about your amazing family that I love.
Yeah, so my husband and I got married in 2005. We waited a few years to finish college, and we decided that we wanted to start a family about 4 years into our marriage. And then we tried and prayed and did all the treatments and kind of the protocol for infertility. And I don't like to use the word struggled or survived infertility, because I feel like it doesn't give glory to the journey of infertility and what couples go through. So we experienced infertility for about 8 years. And then we came to a crossroads financially where we decided we had two options. We could either spend money and do IVF, in vitro, or we could do adoption. And we just decided that at that point, we came together. I was ready to adopt before, but it took about 2 years for Matthew to kind of grieve the loss of, biological child and really trust the Lord on what he wanted for our family. And so we decided to pursue adoption. We went through a private Christian agency where the expectant mothers pick the adoptive parents for their child. So we were waiting for 2 years. In that 2 years, we experienced a failed match where someone had chosen us but then changed her mind. And so that was kind of a huge hit for us. That was in August of 2013. And then it kind of really hit bottom for me. And I think that was kind of my first wrestle match with the Lord, where, you hear in church that God puts the desires on your heart and he will fulfill them. And so I felt like tricked, like what kind of God would give us this desire to be a family and for me to be a mom and then take that away. And so that 4 months was probably, I always give this analogy of I felt like I was moving towards, like God was leaving breadcrumbs, but I was crawling. And so, and I've spoken to many women on this or about this subject before, that, even if your face is in the dirt and you are literally crawling on your hands and knees, God can still be faithful, and he can still drop those breadcrumbs for you to keep going. And so for 4 months, we were just really in this desolate place and God was silent. And that was the first sort of experience where I learned that a silence doesn't mean a no from God, which is really hard. And then in 2014, we got the call that a woman who was 8 months pregnant was expecting, and she was having a boy. And so we had 2 months of kind of courtship with her. And then, she delivered him in March, and we have an open adoption. which I'm very passionate about, and I advocate for that. My son is Black, so we have a transracial family. But we have an open adoption where what that looks like now is that she comes 4 times a year. She stays the night at our house. He, interacts with her. He spends times with her, and sometimes they'll sleep in the same room together, which is weird to a lot of people. But he's not mine, and I always tell people that. I mean, God allowed us to be his parents, but we just have to raise him and give him back to the world. So, yeah, it's very uncomfortable, and there's a lot of uncomfortable situations that have led to where we are now in our life with him and her, but their relationship is probably paramount to his upbringing now. And so being able to really be secure in who we are as parents and our roles in his life and her life, and step back and just let him be a kid. So that's what our family looks like now. He's 6. She was just here the other day, and we're a blended family, I guess, if you will.
That's such a beautiful act right there. That takes so much strength. It's so
very
selfless.
Condensed version, yeah.
Very selfless of you.
So I think what it is, what I encourage women for this particular situation of infertility and adoption, it's very uncomfortable, to admit that you're infertile or that you can't have children, and then to kind of swing into adoption. But really just be secure in God's journey for you, and just to be open to it and be proud of it, what that looks like, and really, pour into your child, whatever race or gender or whatever that story looks like that they're coming from. But I always advocate that expectant mothers aren't answers to us having children. It's a partnership because they're mothers,
Right.
So acknowledging that he had a life prior to us adopting him, even though it was in utero with her, but we try and teach him that, he is a gift from God, and but there's very delicate language to make him feel secure that he wasn't created just to be ours. Because adoption really stems from loss from the birth mom, loss from the adoptive parents, and loss from the adoptee. It all just, the foundation of that is loss, but really just seeking God and letting him glorify the ashes into something bigger than ourselves. So
You never cease to amaze.
Glad you have something like that. We're a very complex family, so.
But you always do the hard thing, and
Yeah.
I just love that about you.
Yeah.
And Matthew, like, you guys are such an amazing family.
Yeah, and we always joke that, like, we've been through some pretty hard stuff, but we kind of come out and, then we kind of feel the waters shifting a little bit, and the seasons change and the leaves drop, and we know that God's going to bring us through again. But through our courtship and our marriage and, our story of becoming a family and just current events, it's, the more trials and wrestling that you do with God, which is okay to have godly anger.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing too that we've learned is where we have felt failed by, ministry or whatnot, that God is always constant, and it's healthy to take that anger to him because there's nothing he can't handle.
That's right.
So yeah, right?
So you mentioned that your son is Black.
Yes.
And given the situation and where we are with everything going on regarding race, what does motherhood look like for you?
Motherhood currently, it looks crazy. In February and into March, we were just living life normal. we were both working full-time. Levi was in school full-time. And then when everything happened with COVID, our lives kind of got flipped upside down. And so what that looked like for me and most parents out there, not being able to work, turning into a teacher at home and learning all those skills that I was not trained for, and just being inside and really protecting my son and just trying to process what new normal looks like with him. So that was March and April and May, and then with all the current events, it's really hit close to home. Obviously our son's Black, and we've kind of been, I feel like God's been prepping us for the last 6 years of what's happening now. We've always, so one of the main reasons why we have an open adoption is because there are things that we can't teach our son, and we are confident in that. There are things that he will seek from people that look like him. So we've spent 6 years building a Black community for him outside of adoption. There was a time that we kind of joke about it in our support group that all of our Black children are going to think that all Black children are adopted by white parents. So we decided that it was really important for him to have a Black community outside of adoption so that he didn't think that all Black moms, placed their child for adoption, or that all Black children at his school were adopted by white parents. So, I feel like God was kind of harvesting that land with him, and so now with current events, with all the protests and the movements, there's been amazing progress that we've seen happen really fast, but it's also kind of resurfaced all of kind of the yuck of what people have been brought up to think or just naturally react. And so having to shift gears from pandemic of COVID to the Black Lives Matter movement. So currently we're teaching him a little more than what he learned at school. Having a 6-year-old, we kind of give it to him in bite-sized pieces that he can digest. But he's, familiar with Martin Luther King and what that civil rights movement. But it is really awesome to see how God is almost presenting the same type of society now, where he can really be a part of that history and see what people are standing for. So I feel like my husband and I, me personally, I've had to grow up a lot in the last 4 months. I feel like God is just, I've had to grow up a little bit more and gain some new skills and put on some more armor and just really stand taller, I guess, for my son. So.
Well, he has the best advocate.
Yes, yeah, we try.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So have you experienced racism within your family or even pushback because of the culture of adopting a Black child?
Yeah, so I want to say, fortunately, my husband and I my husband's Jewish and I'm half Japanese and American, and so I say fortunately because we are able to take the experiences that our family has had and learn from them, and be better equipped on how to process and identify. So I think generation-wise, coming from a Jewish background and, an immigrant mother, there has been racist, interactions. But it is different with being Black. And so having a Black child, unfortunately, that, when we got him, I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 2 years. And so you kind of have this protective dome over them. But we knew going into that he was going to learn about his race through his peers. kids are honest. They will just say, what is on their mind, and there's no filter. And so, is that bad? No, because they're just being children. So it did start fairly young. When he was about 3, there was an interaction at a park where there was a child that said that his skin was dark and that it was bad. And I remember, Levi just looking at his hands and going, it's all over me. And I could see it, that he realized that he was different and it was bad. And so he was 3 or 4. And so just teaching him at that age that, no, your skin is different. And thankfully, we're so blessed to have our neighbors right next door to us are a Black family. And so, really being able to come alongside with them and spend time with them, so he's able to see that, it's just the color of your skin. And so that was a few years ago. Recently, and it's interesting because I do lean on the Black community to educate, because I don't know what to look for, what looks look like. And I remember one of my good friends told me that there's a difference between a curious look and inquisitive look, and then a look of hatred and deep-seated resentment, or whatever it looks like. And so I'm having to train myself to identify those looks, even though those looks aren't to me, they're to my son. So we've had instances in banks or, grocery stores that, I'm learning to train my eyes to see what those look like, what those looks, identify those looks. But then it is complex because we are a mixed race family. And so when we're together, it's me and my tall Jewish husband and our son who's Black. So there's the looks of like, I don't really understand what's going on here, and what is this family? Or a great example is we were in Costco when he was little, and he was running down the aisles, and we were with our cart, and this lady came up and just kind of grabbed him. Where's your parents? Are you okay? And we're here. And so I think the farther we are into being a family, the more we forget that we're different. And so, it's me. And then, I'm so sorry, it's okay. And I learned to not be upset about it, but to be thankful that people are concerned and caring for him. And it happens at the bank where, he'll go into the toy section and play, and people are looking for his mom. And I understand and acknowledge, and I agree that they're looking for a Black woman. But when they hear him call me mom, it kind of takes a minute. And so it is a different layer of complexity for our family, because he is Black, but we are not. And so there's the curiosity in public, but then there's also the glare of, I do know what they're thinking. And it happened just like 2 weeks ago. We were out at a lake, and this man was just staring at him, and he was older, and I could just tell. And so part of an exercise muscle that I have to grow up in is addressing it there. And so I went up to him and asked, is there something, can I help you with something? Is there any questions I can answer? Oh no, I was just looking at him, and he was kind of caught off guard, and he obviously was not expecting me to approach him. But what I'm learning through the Black community now is that my son is at an age where he's watching me, and if I don't address the issues that are happening while he's there, he could potentially think that I don't see it, or it's okay that he's treated this way. So it is uncomfortable, because I feel like God, and I always talk about refinement where God kind of burns back the layers, and the story of the potter, and it just is fire that is not comfortable, and it's it can be scary at times, but I feel like God is preparing us for when he does get older and he's not cute anymore, where he's a Black teenager, a Black man who, he can be seen as a threat. So I think now currently it's being able to train my eye to see the things, because he's too little, but if he sees me catch them as they are, then he's going to know, oh, mom knows what's going on, and she sees it and she does not let that slide. And so, but it's hard because I'm not a Black woman, I'm not in that community, but then I'm also a mom to a Black son, so I am in the community, so it's a very delicate place to be.
And I just a side note, he'll always be cute.
Yeah.
He's pretty handsome. He's adorable.
Yeah, he is. He's very charming and smart, but I think where our biggest fear comes from, and this is being transparent, and I feel like any adoptive family with a Black child has this fear in them, but I don't know, it is very uncomfortable to speak, but when he gets older and he's able to drive, or he can go to school without us dropping him off, he will not have the survival skills of being Black in public, because he has not learned those mannerisms, that tone of voice from his parents, because he doesn't see, we don't have to do that. And so that's where that Black community comes in, where and we've kind of relinquished, we feel like God has called us to relinquish that authority over him, where that community will have to teach him those skills of driving and going into stores and interacting with law enforcement. So
you're definitely in a unique situation that not everybody has to deal with. And it's really commendable to you and your husband how you're raising him up and opening up his life to his birth mom and the Black community. And that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is, in those moments when you do see him being attacked by another little kid or even an adult because of his skin color, what do you do and how do you say that to a little boy?
It depends on the situation. I think the glares and the stares are more common and they're more discreet and they can easily be ignored. But it's simply, in those situations, it's making eye contact with the person, and addressing it. Is there something I can help you with? And I've had to learn, because the mama bear comes out and you just want to fight and protect, but I also know that people are human and I can't assume what they're thinking, even though I might think that. But just addressing it in a kind, direct way. And I think that is sort of the behavior that I want Levi to see, is that he can be direct, he can be kind, he can be respectful, but he can also advocate. And so when I see stares, it's making eye contact and how are you doing today? And it kind of trips their thought up a little bit and, oh, I'm great, and you get in a conversation or oh, I'm fine, or do you have any questions? No, I'm okay. And just because I want, it's a muscle I've never had to develop before, but I want him to see that mom sees it and she'll say something. And right now, it's glares or people kind of watching because he's little. And I know that as he gets older, it will be different. It might look like a disagreement at school, or he doesn't get along with someone at school, or when he's in groups of friends or sports teams. And so I've been encouraged to just be involved, go to the meetings and just make a presence, because there is, we're hearing a lot of systemic racism. And I think that people are scared to even think that they would be racist, but I want to encourage people that it's okay to be uncomfortable with your own self. And it's okay to go into what you've been taught and what your parents talk about or your family talks about and be uncomfortable with that, because the action is going to make the change. And I feel like that's where God is kind of shaking up everything right now, where it's the action, you know. You can say something, you can repost something on social media, you can, you know, donate to a cause, which are all beautiful and wonderful things that will make an impact, but it's all comes down to the children are watching. That's sort of, with everything that's been going on, you know, I see the reposts and the movements in the news, and, you know, my heart is just kind of torn into pieces. But when I see, you know, the perpetrators or the victims, God's kind of given me this, like, these lens of children. Like, these men grew up watching a certain interaction or language, or, you know, they were treated a certain way. And so my advocacy and my platform right now is to keep doing what you're doing, but to really, if you are in any way ever interacting with a child, that's going to be the change. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that generation, and that's where we can to make the change, is teaching the children. And I feel like using the physical things of your voice, speaking it. I mean, it sounds so elementary, but, you know, if you see something that doesn't feel right, and I feel like everybody has an intuition, but I feel like as Christians, it's that Holy Spirit. And if God is telling you it's uncomfortable, it's probably there for a reason. And so if you speak something, you're going to be able to minister in that situation. Your children or whoever, the people around you, are going to be able to see it. But I feel like that's where God is challenging us, is to do the action. Mm-hmm. He's created this environment for change, but now it's the action of making the change. So just being able, you know, with Levi in the moment, if it's uncomfortable, I just have this peace that it's going to be okay. Like, God's not going to put me in a situation where I'm in danger or, you know, will be hurt or whatnot. But I feel like, and it might be evangelism to some, I mean, that is not my spiritual gift by any means, but when you just know that you have to say something, just do it. And I feel like that's what God's calling everyone to do. But for me and Matthew personally, is just to say it, you know, address it, because our son is watching. And I think that as he grows up, that will carry him into adulthood and how to interact with people. So.
Yeah, and you're right in that. Our children are watching everything that we're doing, and so our actions speak louder than any, you know, we can talk all we want to them, but our actions and the way they see us interact in the world around us in these sort of situations is really what speaks to them and leaves that imprint in their mind and in their heart. Yeah,
and just the interactions with people when you don't think they're watching, when you're on the phone or at the grocery store, or, you know, the moments where, in my husband being a teacher, he's always said that children are on record until they're about 11, and then they're on playback for the rest of their life. So right now they're just recording everything, and then when they turn 5th grade or whatnot, they're just going to play everything back. And so that forms them into their adulthood. And so just being able to, you know, in your own way, just listen to what God's telling you, instead of just that intuition of that little thing that's going, this isn't really right. Mm-hmm. You know, you should probably say something or address it. So
good. Yeah. So good. I love that you always do that. You always step out even when it's uncomfortable. I must say that my children are a little bit older, but they don't ever stop watching you. And as they get older, they like to go, aha, we caught you. We caught you doing something wrong. And so I was just thinking, well, if you're enjoying it that much, that must mean that I don't do that much wrong. So right. At least that you know about.
Yeah. They are. They want to catch you, and, you know.
They do. Yeah. And that never changes.
Right.
How do you feel that Levi has been adjusting through this season?
You know, it is interesting, and again, I think adoptive parents at some point in their children's journey will go through, process this with their child. But even before all this had happened, he's starting to understand his story a little bit and process his story. And so before all this happened, probably within the last year, he'll say things like, you don't look like me, or I wish my parents matched me. And so we're just having to really come alongside him and not pacify that of, oh, it's okay, or it's not what you think, or, not even really spiritualize that. And I know, and Pastor Miles had said that in a recent interview, to not overly spiritualize the reality of what being human is like in this fallen world. And so he's been, processing his story and what adoption is, and his, skin color, and him being the only Black person in our immediate family. And so it's been interesting seeing that. But now with all of the movements and the protests that are everywhere, I mean, we can't go to the store without seeing protests. We really take it as an opportunity to show him that he knows through school and through Martin Luther King that he always says that Black people had smaller drinking fountains than white people, or we weren't allowed on the bus. And so we kind of take that a little further. The people with the signs are fighting for people with your skin color, because right now there are people who aren't being treated nicely, and bad things are happening. And so, really being able to, and I don't think that even has to deal with, our son being Black. It could be any family with your child, of addressing what's going on and showing them that this is a really dark and sad time, but good can come out of it. And there are good people, fighting and making change for them, for my son, for your daughter. And again, it doesn't matter what race, but just really showing them that there's a lot of change going on, but it's good, good will come out of it.
Yeah, we don't always grow in our comfort zone, right?
No.
So what in this season, what are some uncomfortable things that you guys are going through as a family?
Yeah, having raised conversations with our own family, our moms and dads and sisters and brothers and friends. We've had to, our analogy with our family is that it's our boat, and if people are sinking our boat, they gotta get out of the boat. So we've had to kick some people out of our boat. But really educating our family and friends of what Levi's life could potentially be like. We can't say for certain what interactions he will have with people. But because of the color of his skin, we do know now that it is a reality, that those could very well happen. So it is uncomfortable having those conversations with our family. Our families are kind of sanctuary, but addressing these hard subjects with them and educating them, even though they're not going to be going through that. And so that's been really interesting. They like to think that Levi's part of our family, and this won't happen to them, and because they won't have to experience that, but just forewarning them that these things could happen to them, and this is how we support him. And if you guys don't agree with that, then at least you know where we stand. Mm-hmm. So those have been hard conversations with him, and just practical things. A couple weeks ago when things were really hot and there was a lot of action going on with the movements, we decided to keep him home, for a little over a week. And it was really hard for me, just kind of mourning that reality at that time of like, I'm keeping my son away from public because of the color of his skin. Mm-hmm. And that was hard because I decided it was best for him not to hear the conversations that adults were having, because there's so much change going on and people are very emotional because we've been inside for 3 months. Some people aren't working for 3, and they're at home with their kids. And so people are very passionate about certain things. And so him not hearing those conversations, and just for his safety, unfortunately, there are very dangerous people who are who don't live in our town, who are coming in and making their presence known. And so just really identifying the energy shift in the environment and just realizing that it's probably not safe for him to be out in public during that time. So that's hard.
That's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But you always do the right thing. I just love
I mean, it's inconvenient as all get out, but at the same time, it's not worth the risk. And so it's the big picture of what's safest for our family. So,
what is it that you really want the world to know about your son, Levi?
You know that he's smart, that, I mean, I can picture him as a grown man, but he's kind, that he has a family that advocates for him, that even though his parents are white, that he is Black, and we're more than okay with that. We love that about him, and we encourage that, that he's safe, and that he's and it is interesting. We've really had to swallow the pill of, oh, we're everyone's the same, and we're not color, there's no such thing as different race and color. But I've had to learn that if I don't see that about my son, then I don't see him. If I think that he's just like us, then I'm not seeing who he is. And so, just showing the world that he is Black, but he's capable of anything, and he's smart, and he's a human. He's a human, and he's going to act like all humans and make mistakes and have great accomplishments. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's Levi, and so that is my hope for his generation and the young generation now who are protesting and really passionate about this movement, that hopefully change will come and it will make a positive impact for his future. So
he definitely is sweet and loving and kind and smart and all of those things.
Yeah,
I can say that firsthand, having him as a student in my classroom.
Yeah,
but he definitely is an example of love, and he radiates love. But so do you. And your picture of your family is love. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, we just want the world to know that, families don't always match, and there's always a story behind what doesn't look normal. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's bad. It's just, at the end of the day, it's family.
This is our family, and God handpicked us to be a family together.
And God sees all those things, and He doesn't care. It's regardless, and I think that's the great thing about, our walk and our faith, is that God is a good father. He is a good husband. He is a good friend, and He's a fierce protector as well. I think that it is easy to kind of just soften the image of God, but for me, and what I try and teach Levi is the reverence. Like, we are sons and daughters of the King of the universe. I mean, that is huge royalty. And so just being able to teach him to stand tall in who he is, and hopefully other people will gravitate to that, to that kindness and protection and love and respect towards others. So
the image of God that's within him.
Yeah,
right?
Because that's who we are loved by, and that's how we love him, and we hope that he would do that to others too.
So what is it that you want your son to know about the world?
I want him to know that good things happen to good people, and bad things happen to good people. Especially now, I think, I will say this, that we do want him to know that regardless of how bad it will seem, we still live in the greatest country ever. Right. And I want him to be proud of that, proud that he lives here, proud that he's an American, but also know that he has the freedom from us to experience where his place in the world is and what the history of his people, what that story is and what that carries, because of the color of his skin. But I want him to know that there are good people out there and that he is protected. There is safety, and, that he really he can make change. And he can, even in the small things, he doesn't have to do the great big things. He can do the small things that have a lasting impact. I also want him to know that he doesn't have to find truth in media and social media. I fear that for his generation, that he will not know what it's like to not have a cell phone or to have a computer. Mm-hmm. And I just want him to know that he can seek answers outside of what everyone is telling him is the truth. Because at the end of the day, open up the Bible, it's all there. Those are where all the answers are. And so open up the Bible. God has already written it down. And don't seek the answer. Don't take the answers that people are giving you. If it doesn't feel right or it doesn't make sense, go back to the Word, find it, pray about it, have that relationship, and then you can formulate, but don't take the easy way, because it will become easier, mm-hmm. especially for his generation, just to take what's given to them as truth, and it's not. And we know that. So yeah, just to really go back to the Bible. It's all there, and God, and that's universal. Yes. Because there are Christians in the Middle East and Africa and Asia and all over the world, but they're all reading the same words. And so that right there has more gravity than what someone's posting. Right. But I want him to know that he's Black and that he doesn't have to be anything other than what he is and what he was created. He doesn't have to act white around. There's a thing, in an adoptive community called like code switching, where he could be in our family and he could be too Black for the white family, but too white for the Black family. And so it's this switch of changing language and mannerisms, but I just want him to know that he doesn't have to feel constrained by that he can be who he wants to be and really accept and love and dive into who he is and what his story is and what his birth mother's story and that whole side of the family. I don't want him to think that he has to compartmentalize mm-hmm. the people in his life, that he has to shut one door and open the other door, that he can really just take it all in and formulate his own self-identity. So I love that. Yeah.
That's so freeing.
It is. I don't want him to feel suffocated that he can't be who he is because he doesn't want to make us mad or he doesn't want to make his birth mom mad or he doesn't want to go through sadness and I think children know if they act a certain way and mom cries or mom gets mad, well, they're not going to do that again, but I don't want him to think, and it's kind of a partnership with him where we try and not show him our emotions if things kind of sting a little, that he'll say, because he processes it out loud, but at the same time, I don't want him to think that, well, I can't feel that way because mom's going to get upset and I don't want to make her mad, because I'm fine. I'm an adult. I can deal with my own, I am a bratty child of God sometimes as well. So just learning that he can be free in that.
Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. You definitely have a lot of wisdom. Through the whole process, is there anything else that you've learned that you really want people to know about the process, your family?
Yeah, kind of the core values of what we've learned is that there's a lot of freedom that I feel like people don't think that they have with their walk. Whatever circumstances you have or trials you're facing or confusion or hurt, it's okay to take the non-positive emotions to God. Because I think for myself, in my spiritual walk and just kind of life with the Lord, is that there was a lot of things that I felt shamed that I couldn't bring to him or that he couldn't help me with. And so what I've learned that has helped me is, Jesus is the Father, and he is a protector, and he is, a provider, and all these positive things. But he is also a suffering servant. And I love the two things in his life that stand out is when he's in the garden and he's pleading. He knows what's going to happen. And I think as Christians, we know in the end, God will bring us through it and God will provide. But in that moment, Jesus was in the garden and he knew what was going to happen to him, and he knew what that looked like, and he had the power to stop that. But I think that he stepped out of that role and was human and pleaded with God, as if there's any way that this could not happen to me, can you just make that happen? And so I think that as a woman, and being a mom or being a working professional or being a wife or a sister or whatever role that you have in life, there are going to be those times where something's coming and you just don't want it to happen because you know that life could be easier without it. But just know that God did that too. He knew what was going to happen, and he knew that he could skate around it. But he pleaded with his Father for it not to happen. And I think that really humanized God for me, that, wow, you're not just king of the universe. Like, you actually begged to not go through this as well. And then when he was on the cross, God, he pleaded with God again, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me? And I think that right there, that anger and sorrow and sadness and mourning, he took that directly to his Father. And I think that is something that we have freedom to do, is to be sad in the presence of God and to wrestle with him. And God is not the Candyman. I think we've learned that through infertility and just the trials of marriage, and that he doesn't just hand out the things that you ask for. That's not who he is. And I think where you can easily lose faith is when you don't get the things that you receive. It's, well, God doesn't love me, or God doesn't exist, or I don't know what this Christian thing's about because that's not what I sang about or what I was taught. And so God doesn't always hand out the things that you ask for, but if you have the hope and the knowledge and the confidence that what is perfect will be given to you, and it might not be your timeline or your vision or your circumstances, but he always sees us through, and he is the great shepherd, and he will take that one sheep that is lost and bring them back. And so I think that just being able to be at peace with the realities of what it looks like to be a Christian, living today, and those opportunities that we have. And then also, being able to wrestle with God and know that if he doesn't answer, it doesn't mean a no. It just means a not now,
Right.
And he's a parent. I think as parents, or just or guardianship of our children, I mean, we know what's best for our kids, and we withhold when we know that it's not right for them. And so I think, wanting to become a mom for so long and just having it in my head that this is how it was going to happen, and then kind of getting a tease of what that looked like, and then having that taken away from me, and that really brought me to my knees of like, this isn't the God that I was told about, and this is not the God that I believe in. But really wrestling with him and just being intimate, that like, this is not what you promised me. Well, yeah, it isn't what I promised you because that's what you thought. You know, and just being a cancer survivor and going through that at the age of 33 of like, this isn't what it's supposed to happen. And, you know, but just really, really listening to what God is telling you and being able to exercise those muscles and really like the audio of just listening to him saying, you know, you're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. He doesn't promise that you're not going to go through it. He just promises that it's going to be good. And so it is easier to not do the hard things, but to do the uncomfortable is so much more rewarding. So having that strength to go through it, to ask for help, you know, to be uncomfortable and ask people for prayer or lean on someone who might have gone through whatever you're going through ahead of you so that they can walk alongside of you and having that hope that it will get better. But also just relinquishing your control. There are things that you can control, but there's a lot that you can't. But God has it all figured out. And really just knowing that as women, and I always tell, you know, my sisters in Christ this when they're not feeling well or they're feeling insecure or that they don't belong, that, you know, you just look at the royal family, Google Kate Middleton or whatnot, and just look at any royal family and you see that crown and their just their style and their grace and just that pride, and like that is just a tiny mustard seed of what we are in the kingdom. And it's that we're daughters to the King of the universe. And so just be proud of that you're a princess and you were kings and queens and the kingdom that will come, you know, our life will in the blink of an eye will transition into what we were meant to be. And so holding on to that and just knowing that it's okay to have hard days. It's okay to not know the answers. It's okay to be angry or sad or you know, but just not to give up and just to keep your eyes focused, to just stay in the game, I guess, you know, because this isn't forever. And, you know, one thing that I love to do is just picture what my room in the mansion's gonna look like. And just, I don't know, be worldly. Think about sapphire floors and diamond ceilings, you know? I mean, that's just the things that God promises. And just knowing that, like, our heaven is so much bigger and really seeking out the things on this earth that give you that vision, whether it's, you know, going on a walk in nature or being by the ocean. Or for me, I love going to the Oregon Pavilion in Balboa Park because I always look up and I see the pipe organ, but God has given me this vision that in heaven, I mean, you won't even see the end, you know, of these organs. It's going to be so loud and just really take those opportunities to gravitate towards those things that give you that slice of heaven. Because I feel like God puts those things on earth, whether it's people or environments or places where it's like, this is the taste and just keep coming here. You know that this is what it's going to be 10 times better. And we don't even know how much better. So
one of those great things here on earth is worship.
Yes.
What is your favorite worship song?
I love Good Grace by Hillsong.
That is a great song.
And the reason why I love that song is because it is, when you hear it and you hear it in church or you hear it in your car, the way that they sing it and the words of the song, I mean, it's such a proclamation. Mm-hmm. It's emotional, but it isn't sad, or it's such a firm stand that, you know, and the words were, you know, swing wide and the praise go up as the walls come down. I mean, you just literally envision like walls of hurt or whatever it is in your life coming down and just this overflow of praise. And I just love that it's so loud, you know, it's loud to sing it, and it's almost like a direct call to God. It's a proclamation.
Kristi Lyons, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. You have a wealth of wisdom.
Thank you.
And your love is amazing. The love that your family
shares, the way that you interact, the way that you teach and you do the hard things. You've been a huge blessing to us today. So I just want to thank you so much for coming. And there's more to your story.
There's a lot
So
more.
we're looking forward to having you back sometime.
Yes,
soon.
thank you. I would love that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And remember, you have strength, you have hope, and you have loveliness.
Thank you for joining us on Radiant Pearls Ministries. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
This is all you see in Radiant Pearls Ministry.